But now, I want your calls on this. Should there be anti-misogyny lessons in schools? 0278 862 is the number that you need. The government reportedly wants schools to teach about healthy relationships and kindness in a bid to combat influencers like Andrew Tate. And a new guidance being drafted. These lessons could begin as early as primary school, where young pupils will be taught how to understand boundaries and pay attention to the preferences of others. Now, at secondary school, they will be taught about things like consent and how to manage disappointment or anger in relationships. And they could also be taught about the influence of internet pornography and misogynistic content. Now, this, of course, comes after the huge success of the Netflix show Adolescence, which the Prime Minister has encouraged schools to show. Nelufar, Adolescence, for people who haven't seen it, you're getting a family's perspective of what happens when their boy carries out a horrific attack, a murder of a schoolgirl having been influenced online. That's and there's no spoilers there, because it literally is how every aspect of that family is affected. What do you think? Do you think we need to do more in schools?
Yes, absolutely. And I worry about anyone who thinks anti-misogynist education is somehow a bad thing. Why would it be wrong to teach at a very young age the principle of consent, the principle of how to conduct yourself around other members of society and not? I'll tell you a very, very simple and short story. One of my friends is a teacher, specifically dealing with Year 6. They've told me repeatedly that the amount of the sexualization of young people at a younger and younger age, because the fact that they're online, the bullying that they have to endure because of how they're socialized online. There is nothing in society that prepares us nowadays with the amount of online influence that happens. And I am scared. I genuinely am scared. I'm not being hyperbolic. Genuinely am scared that this is going to all erupt in 10 and 15 years' time, when these young boys who are witnessing Andrew Tate at the age of 7, 8 and 9 grow up to become men. We already have a femicide rape culture in Britain, where only 5% of rape in this country is actually prosecuted, less are convicted. We need to stop this as young as possible.
Okay.
Primary school seems just about right.
Tim, should young kids starting in primary school, but actually getting properly educated in secondary school, have anti-misogynistic lessons?
I'm worried about when you start to do this and how you start to do it. I agree with a lot of what Nelufar said about the scale of the problem we have in our society at the moment. But there'll be parents watching this now, Alexis, who will know that they are worried that their kids at the moment in school are not even learning the basics. They're not leaving school with, basic literacy and numeracy. And part of it is because the curriculum is already being overloaded. So in an ideal world, of course, schools will teach everything, and they better prepare children for every kind of problem.
But sorry to interrupt you, Tim,
Yeah.
but isn't part of the basics, part of being able to read and write properly and do basic maths, isn't part of school interaction with others, respect for others, learning how to work with others?
Of course it is.
So isn't that as important as numeracy and literacy?
If it can be done alongside these things without compromising the basic education, then fine. But at the moment, most teachers will say to you, the hours that they have to put in after school at the moment to learn new things, to prepare new lessons, are already being massive new demands upon schools. Where does it stop? And you can always say you integrate it with what we teach already. That's harder said than done.
But the thing that's being...
Easier said than done, even.
It is harder said than done. The thing that you're missing out slightly, Tim, is the fact that we're growing up with a generation of young boys who are going to turn into men who have an apathetic... who have a one-way relationship with women, OK? They're not interacting on a healthy level. They're only interacting with them online and in unsafe ways.
We're going to pick this up in just a second. So we're going to pause that debate just there for a quick break. Later, get your calls in now. 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. Now, look, I'm going to show you a disturbing survey that's been out there. This graph, more than 1 in 5 males aged between 15 and 24 in Britain said they think a woman's place is in the home. And look at the graph and how it's risen there over the years. So there's a steep rise past 2021, and that's Germany, France, and Britain all together. 15 to 24-year-olds who agree that a woman's place is in the home. I think that's quite shocking.
Do you know, this is so... I'm a refugee from Afghanistan. This is what we fled.
Well,
this is why we left. I can't believe that they think that.
It is a shocking statistic. Well, let's read some of your messages. You've been getting in touch on Facebook. Robin on Facebook says, education should move with the times. Core subjects should always be taught, but we should also be teaching children about current issues and things that they have to deal with in the real world. Giles also on Facebook says, just ban social media for under 16s, and then you'll see a fast improvement. Tim, a big nod from Tim there. Rebecca on Facebook says, surely this is a parenting responsibility, right? Schools offer education, social skills, and being a caring human should be taught and demonstrated in the home environment. Josephine from London is our first caller. Josephine, welcome to the show. What do you think? Do we need anti-misogyny lessons in secondary school?
Hi, good morning. Lovely to the panel. The reason why I called in is because I wanted to reiterate the point that the lady made on the panel about her experience of some... Yes?
Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Her experience of primary school. I'd like to reiterate that I believe that this type of education needs to begin in primary school, not year 5, not year 6. I think we need to take it back as far as possibly year 2. That's 6 and 7-year-olds. Yes, because lots of people, and there are lots of comments out there about the depiction of the secondary school in the program Adolescence. Many people are shocked. This is not shocking. These are secondary schools up and down the land.
Yeah,
the boy in question, he was 14 years of age. He was already socialized. He had somehow, it's multifaceted, but we need to take it back to primary school. Young children of 6 and 7 are being exposed to information. They're within environments where they're seeing things. They're being miseducated.
Do you work in education?
I used to. I was a SEN TA in primary school.
Was that long ago? Were you witnessing evidence of kids? Because I remember about 4 or 5 years ago when Andrew Tate first became a name that as a parent you're like, who is this Andrew Tate? Now, I asked my daughter, she must have been about 15 at the time, and she said, oh yeah, no, all the boys talk about Andrew Tate. They've got him on their phones and everything. Did you notice that happen when you were teaching?
Absolutely. 4 or 5 years ago, I was teaching 9 or 10-year-olds. And they were already on social media. They were already talking between themselves. They were already seeing and hearing what their older siblings and adults around them were discussing and ingesting in a good way, in a bad way. Nobody's really explaining to them what they're seeing, what they're hearing. Everybody's too busy getting on with their jobs.
Yeah. Josephine, thank you. Great call to kick us off. Tim, do you want to say?
One of the reasons I worry about this being taught in schools too early is we have to be sure when we teach something, we know the effect of what we teach. And just for raising awareness potentially amongst young children who haven't got that awareness at the moment, it might actually be counterproductive.
That's a bit
are we absolutely sure?
That's a bit naive.
I think it's naive.
That's very naive. To assume that a person...
Am I allowed to finish my point? Just briefly.
Go on, let him finish his point.
Unless we have a strategy that we know works, it's dangerous to put something into our education system that might actually raise awareness and actually be counterproductive.
Okay.
It is too late. You were too late. The house was already on fire.
For some children, not all children.
It's already on fire. You saw the statistics. You're hearing the testimony. This is already too late. If we don't act now, if we're not in schools at the moment, in year 2, as Josephine suggests, who I wholeheartedly agree with, we run the risk of in 5 or 6 years' time having young people who are entrenched in these views and no longer flexible to a bit of a chat.
I'll throw another little stat in the mix just for people to sort of get their minds in. The Times was reporting a couple of weeks ago that the amount of male teachers in secondary schools has fallen off a cliff.
That's a real issue,
It's 1 in 3, whereas it used to be 50-50.
Yeah.
Now, the argument is being made there that where are those male role models for younger men at school? They're also not there. So that's something else that we need to think about. Yeah. Josephine, great call to kick us off. Thank you. Let's move to Jackie, who's got in touch from Hampshire. Jackie, good morning. What do you think? Do we need those anti-misogyny lessons in secondary school?
I think we don't need anti-misogyny specifically, but
Right.
I am interested in equality. So I don't think it should be... The reason I dislike the idea of misogyny is it's focusing on men or young men being the problem, whereas actually I think society is the problem. We need to be looking at equality across the board. And also I think that young men are getting so much pressure put on them that there's bound to be some sort of kickback. So it's more about being treated equally than focusing on one particular gender.
Well, what about this idea that we heard from one of our earlier messages on Facebook of banning social media at schools? Do you think that's even workable?
I think it needs to be part of a discussion and awareness. I think while you can't avoid everything in life, it just isn't possible, but having an all-round conversation about treating each other fairly and how you are to each other and being respectful is much more important than focusing in on one particular group of people. I don't think that helps anyone.
Okay,
and
Jackie?
I think that,
Yeah, Jackie, thank you. Good point. Maybe a much more holistic view, an all-round view. Let's hear from Lewis, who's got in touch from Essex. Lewis, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hi, I just wanted to agree with the last caller, really.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really any need to have lessons like that taught in school. There's enough pressure on the young kids nowadays, especially obviously the young boys, which will be aimed at the boys.
Lewis, sorry to interrupt you. We just saw a stat there that young boys are starting to have views on women that 5-6 years ago weren't there. So something's going on, and it's going on with specifically young boys. So are we saying that we're just going to ignore that problem?
No, I'm not saying that it needs to be ignored, but I think it's down to your family dynamic and like parents. Like I'm a father, and I teach my boy how to behave and how to be a good person. Just all round. I've been married for 12 years, and we're still going strong. So he has a good idol like me to see how to treat women. I think having that kind of just having the boys all how to treat women, and I think there's one thing that I've seen. Men are taught how to treat women, but not what to expect from a woman. I think that's quite true.
Okay.
And women are taught what to expect from a man, but not how to treat a man. So sometimes I think boys nowadays are kind of just. They aren't allowed to be themselves because they're always doing something wrong.
Lewis, I'm going to stop you there just because of time, because we need to move on. Thank you for your calls. Thanks for all your calls on that.